Well, wouldn't you know? It be yet another episode of Portland's podcast. Excellent. Take it away, lad.
And one. Hey, everybody. How's it going? Welcome back to the Portland Media Center for yet another episode of Between the Piers. How's everyone's day going? I took a bit of a mini vacation recently, decided to go to the beach for the first time this summer, all summer long, and soak up the sun and even got a chance to go in the ocean. The ocean is cold. The ocean is always cold. I missed how face-burning cold Maine's oceans were, within reason, of course. I digress. Today, we're absolutely not talking about the ocean. Today, rather, the episode is about one of, if not the most time-tested tools of humanity. A tool that has been on the side of men and women for thousands of years, has leveled entire forests, and carved the way for humans for millennia. Without this tool, it's not a far-fetched notion to say that humanity would not be nearly as comfortable as where it is currently at. I am, of course, talking about the axe. And with me to talk about the axe is one of the founders of Maine's very own Brant and Cochran, Mark Ferguson. If you've been around Portland at all and like woodcraft, you've likely heard of Brant and Cochran, as their traditionally crafted wedge axes are genuinely objects that belong in museums. And I have, as a registered Maine guide, been staring at the Allagash Cruiser for forever. Mark, how are you doing today?
Good, man. Thanks for having me.
Good. Thank you so much for being here. Again, the Allagash Cruiser, the Patten, I've seen all of your axes, and I just, it's like, If I could afford one, I would be buying all of them.
We can make that happen.
Okay. Yep. Well, please chat with me after the show. But before we get into that, let's talk about the history of axes. Your website has an incredible amount of detail and information on the tools, as axes are very obviously a passion project for everyone who works at Brant and Cochran. Where does the axe historically originate? Is there a culture that kind of develops them, or do we see them kind of spontaneously pop up in multiple places throughout human history?
Yeah, you see the tool really pop up all over the place, all over Europe. But what became the evolution of what we call an axe here in the United States today really started back in the 1600s, and with axes being made in Spain, because that's where all the good steel was. It was Biscayne steel. And so the very first axe that looked like a kind of a tomahawk was made in Spain. And those then migrated up to France. The French then came over to the United States, or came over to America. The French Canadians were using these, then they called them trade axes. And they were used in all of the trapping and not much of a timber industry at that point, just cutting down trees to make housing for people, for the traders. But that all started back in the 1600s with that trade axe. That eventually turns into something that has a pole on it. So the trade axe looks like what you think of a tomahawk is. So it does not have a pole. The pole of an axe is the back part, that if you're go camping, that's what you're driving stakes with, the back part of the axe.
The kind of like the hammer side
correct,
of it?
Yeah, correct. The hammer side of that.
Yeah.
And the trade axes did not have that because the steel was wrapped around, it was heated up and wrapped around a round handle.
Oh, wow.
And eventually, as we started really cutting down trees, the Americans developed the pole of the axe. And so they started calling them pole axes. And the pole on the axe was then used because it provided more mass when you're swinging. It also allowed you, as you said, turn it around. You can use it as a hammer if you need to, or driving wedges into a tree to fell the tree. But the trade axe eventually evolves into this pole axe. And the axes that end up being developed in America drive the development of axes back in Europe. So it kind of comes over from Europe to America, gets exported again back to Europe, and now European axes, some of them have poles to them. The axes in Europe are not necessarily as big because a lot of their hardwood forests were already, by the 1800s, were already chopped down. Whereas coming to the United States, coming to America, we had these massive hardwood forests everywhere, so you needed an axe with a little more oomph behind it.
A little more swing to it.
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely. Isn't that interesting? So they start in Europe, and then they go to the United States, and then they go back to Europe as a
as an American axe.
As
Yeah.
an improved design. So it starts in England, goes to New England, and back to England. I guess maybe not England, but definitely Spain and France. So before the pole, right? Because when most people think of axes, they think of that pole design in the back. Was the steel just embedded into the handle, or how did it stay on?
So what the blacksmiths would do, and still there's blacksmiths in the United States now making traditional axes this way. So the piece of steel is flattened out, and then it's bent, it's kind of brought together. So think of a flat piece of steel heated up to we heat our metal up to about 1900 degrees, heated up to 1900 degrees or so, and then folded. And then when they would fold it, they would leave a drift, so like a round piece of metal in there to fold it around, and that would be the area where the handle would be inserted. And so the handles on these trade axes, like we actually made one for America's 250th birthday. We made something we called a Mackinac trade axe.
Oh.
And so it's one of these poleless axes that would have been used back at the time of the Revolutionary War by both British and American soldiers. It was part of their kit that they carried with them.
No kidding.
But that axe, the handle's friction fit on it. So now when we're putting a handle on an axe head, we're using a wedge. Like if you go to a hardware store and you look at our axes, you'll see a wooden wedge that's pounded into the handle while it's on a axe head that then spreads the wood apart, and the whole thing's held together by friction.
Really?
And the handles on these trade axes, these round handles on the original axes from the 16 and 1700s, were also a friction fit. And so what they would do is kind of like pound the handle into the end of the axe head, into the hole where that would go. And you could also then hit it and knock it off. So you could carry it in two pieces if you wanted to, or you could carry it with the handle attached.
And I'd imagine that. So the wood spreads within the head of the axe, and that's how it kind of stays together.
Yeah. So there's no epoxy or anything like that. Really, what you're doing is you have your axe head. You've got the place where you're going to put the handle in it.
Mm-hmm.
You cut what's called a kerf down into the center of the axe handle. So you cut that down. You take a wooden wedge, and you take a mallet and you wail on it and get that down. And what that's doing then is spreading that axe handle against the inside, the eye of the axe, to hold that handle in there. And that's what holds the axe handle to the head.
And I'd imagine that would be stronger than an adhesive, right? Because if you had an adhesive, that's a weaker point versus just using the friction of the wood.
Right.
Wow. That is, they were just so ahead of their time.
Yeah.
Well,
we're still doing it.
You're still doing it.
Same way we do it as they've been doing it for hundreds of years.
Absolutely. I would love to see that Mackinac axe. As a registered Maine guide, I use the Mackinac coat, right?
Yeah,
which is
sure.
like that big green wool coat. So I'd love to see a Mackinac axe. I'd love to see, because I'd imagine that thing is a piece of beauty, an absolutely beautiful piece. Do you make any other historical designs, or are you primarily focused on like the wedge axe?
Actually, kind of all of our axes are based on a historical design.
Okay.
The interesting thing about Maine is Maine used to have dozens of axe companies. This was one of the hubs of axe making in the United States from the late 1800s until kind of the middle of the 1960s is when the last of those Maine axe companies started shutting down. But Maine had its own pattern of an axe called the Maine wedge. And there were hundreds of axe patterns all over the country. There's Puget Sound double bit axe. There's all kind. The Baltimore Jersey pattern. There's hundreds and hundreds of these patterns of axes.
Wow.
But Maine had its own pattern, and which, lucky for us, is one of the easier ones to make. Because it's just a simple wedge.
Yep.
You think of it, it's just a big V.
Yep.
That's all it is. Other axes will have cheeks on them. So if you're drawing a line from the top of the pole down to the bit to the cutting edge,
yep,
you'll see a little bit of it bulging out of the head. So the theory is that splitting going to split the wood apart better.
Oh, yep.
Maine has it's just a straight line from the top of the pole down to the bit, a big old V. And it's really because what we were cutting here were softwoods. That's what we processed.
Yeah, the
Maine.
pine.
And so these big 3.5 pound Maine wedge pattern axes were all wielded in the woods of really New England for the most part.
Right. So they were optimized to the pine trees. And was this during like when they were sending the lumber down the rivers
Yep.
to get to making ships?
Yes, correct.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Uh-huh.
Yep. Wow, that's really cool. So maybe this is like we're going way too far back here, but what is the first axe head style? Because you mentioned there are hundreds, right? What is the first one we see in human history? Like, is that that goes back to like human prehistory?
Well, the
doesn't it?
first ones you see in books are, they're stone. Right?
Yeah.
They're stone strapped to a some kind of a handle.
Like a celt almost?
Yeah, like something like that. Yeah. So, those are the oldest things, and they're not necessarily a pattern to it, I suppose. But yeah, as far as the pattern, like the first patterns, the first patterns were these trade axes, these Biscayne trade axes. And after that, I think the different patterns just evolved in different regions, especially in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And so you'd have different patterns for, like, if you go out west, the Puget Sound style double bits got maybe some of them have like 42-inch long handles, which is
my gosh.
huge.
Yeah.
And the double bit heads are a foot long because they're swinging them against those giant Doug firs out in the Pacific Northwest.
Right.
Where we wouldn't use something like that here in Maine or in the Northeast. We just didn't. The white pines were big, but they weren't Doug fir big.
Right. And it's also, is Doug fir a harder wood than a white pine? Or is it a softer
that I
wood?
don't know.
Sure.
But I would assume they're all part of that same family.
Right. But those big Pacific Northwest axes are definitely overkill for what we got going on here in the pine tree state.
Yeah, it was really just because of the girth of the trees,
Sure.
how big they were and swinging around those.
Wow. That is really neat. So this is absolutely a loaded question from my experience in Boohurt. Do you know what Boohurt is?
Mm-mm.
Oh, you're going to love this. So Boohurt is medieval MMA, right? So you have folks dress in historically accurate armor, using historically accurate weapons,
Mm-hmm.
and the goal, there's like 3 different styles. There's like duels, which is like, I have a sword, you have a sword,
Mm-hmm.
and we see who gets the most strikes.
Right.
There's actual melees, which are 5v5, and everybody's using swords and axes and halberds and other pole arms, and your goal is to knock your opponent to the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And the third is pro fight, which is like actual MMA in armor. The point being, they use axes, right? The axes are blunted, albeit.
Yeah, sure.
But we see single-bladed axes, and then we also have double-bladed axes as well. What is the utilitarian purpose of that double-blade
double bit?
axe? Yeah, double bit, other than for weaponry.
Actually, they're used quite a bit out in the field for logging, and arborists would use them. So they'd be used 2 different ways. One would be they would have two bits, so you're using it all day on one side. Gets dull, flip around, use the other side. So they would grind them the same way.
Yep.
Another use would be they would have one side super sharp, the other one would be dull. They'd use the sharp side for really chopping and cutting wood. They'd use the duller side when they're doing like groundwork, hitting roots. So if they're hitting rocks, it doesn't dull the blade as much.
Sure.
And then a third way they would do it is they would have completely different grinds to the axe, so a different profile, a different shape.
Okay.
And they'd be used for different things. One would be used maybe for chopping into wood, and the other might be used for splitting or limbing or something else. They'd be 2 different grinds to the same axe.
Wow. So I'd imagine it must be really, talking about the Allagash Cruiser particularly, I'd imagine it would be very, very tricky for you to create a do-it-all axe, right? Because, there's such specialty and specialization and hundreds of different styles, right? And the challenge, or maybe not much of a challenge at Brant and Cochran, was to create the do-it-all axe that functions in all of these arenas. So I'd imagine that must have been challenging, or?
Well, not. I mean, that's what the Allagash Cruiser is. We call it. It's a Swiss Army knife type axe.
Wow.
Because it can do a little bit of everything. So you can chop with it, you can split with it, you can limb with it. You can still small enough you can do kindling with it. But on the other hand, like a Swiss Army knife, there are other. If you were just going to be splitting wood, that's an all day. You're doing that all day with hardwood. I wouldn't use the Allagash Cruiser for that. I'd use a bigger axe, or I'd use a maul or something like that.
Like the Katahdin?
The Katahdin is a beast. Yeah, that thing it goes through pretty much everything.
Yep, no doubt. I want an Allagash Cruiser so bad. Oh my gosh. So, moving on from that, what wood handles, like what types of wood work best for axes, and what don't?
Yeah, it's funny because there's kind of a fetish about axe tool handle wood right now, because it's all hickory, basically American hickory. Even if you buy axes from the really good manufacturers in Sweden, they're using American hickory as their handle.
Like Gransfor?
Yeah, like Granfersbruck, Holtzbruck, they're using American hickory.
Oh, wow.
Now, the interesting thing is, back in the day here in Maine, you would use whatever wood was laying around your wood lot to make handles. So there was no, we've got to make this kind of wood. We've got to do this. I mean, we've found old axes that have the original handles on them that are cross-grained white oak and rock maple, and there's a kind of a old wives' tale about the grain orientation on the axe. It's certainly important. It certainly makes the axe swing or the axe handle last longer. It's going to be stronger that way. If it's running parallel to the bit of the axe, that's what you'd want to see. It's straight up and down.
Yep, versus side to side.
Versus sideways across. And but you look at all these old axes from back in the pre-World War II, they're all cross-grained. They're like different kinds of wood, and that was really because no one was afraid of cracking the handle off an axe back then, because they would just put another one on. That's what they did at night. They'd sit in front of the fire and carve a new handle, put it on the axe, go back to work the next day. So, but for us, I mean, we're creating a premium product, so grain orientation to us is very important.
Yep.
And so we only buy, A-grade handles. We cull out probably 20% of the handles our handle makers bring to us.
Wow.
Because that's what people expect when they're buying our axes.
Yeah, no doubt. The dedication to detail on your axes is incredible, and that's why the Allagash Cruiser, which I'm going to completely gas up for the majority of this podcast, folks, get ready, buckle up, is one of the 4 best axes in the world.
Yeah, that came from Field and Stream a few years ago.
That is very high praise.
Yeah, it was along with some of these Swedish axes.
Gransforsbruck, I think.
Granfersbruck.
Gransforsbruck.
Yeah.
I do not speak Swedish remotely. Wow. Yeah. So it didn't matter back then, right? They didn't really care about the wood. Nowadays, as we start to premium axes and they become more of an heirloom than just a utilitarian piece, we start to really care about the wood orientation and the grain and the type of wood, versus back then they were just like, well, I'll just break this one and put another one on.
Well, it was a skill everyone had, was everyone knew how to put an axe handle on.
Yep.
And when we started this business, we thought we did too, and it took us a while to get the hang of it. Literally, and comes from that's axe puns right there. Getting the hang of something.
Oh wait, really?
That comes from axes.
Getting the hang of it is a phrase that comes from axe making.
Mm-hmm.
How so?
Just like flying off the handle.
Oh well, yeah, that one makes a little bit more sense. Just you just crank it back, and suddenly your axe head is bye bye.
That means it would not have been hafted correctly.
Yeah, that would make sense. I did not know getting the hang of it was a axe making phrase. That's really cool. So axes diversify quite a bit from the Hudson Bay to the halberd. You consider a halberd an axe, right? Those long German great axes. To the maul, right? And then to the tomahawk, right? Which we see traditionally depicted with Native Americans, but I'd imagine goes far beyond, indigenous definitely, but we see all these different designs. And why do you think, compared to some of the other tools that we have, they diversify so much as a tool?
Well, they're used for different things, but I mean, if you think of even hammers, there's lots of different kinds of hammers. And you're still hitting the nail or hitting something, right? It's a striking tool, but there's lots of different types of hammers. Just they're made for different jobs.
Yep.
That's pretty much the same thing with axes. The size of the axe, you go from a really small little hatchet. It's used basically to do kindling or carving.
Yeah, like a little camp axe.
A little teeny camp axe that's got a hatchet would be considered maybe a 14-inch handle on a 1-pound head.
Yeah.
Up to one of the larger patterns. I don't know if no one's really making them anymore. Is a Connecticut pattern, which are big 4 to 5 pound axes, axe heads, hung on 34, 36-inch handles. So those were made for bringing stuff down.
Yeah.
And so, and in between, there's all these other different sizes. So the Allagash Cruiser kind of sits in the middle of that group. The Katahdin, which is our full Maine wedge, is the largest thing we make.
That thing is an absolute
and that
monster.
Trade axe we were talking about, that Mackinac trade axe, is the smallest thing we use.
Wow.
Or we make.
So the Mackinac, is it within production or was it a one-time thing?
We started making those in May, and we're wrapping up our first go at those the end of the month, really end of July. We're going to take a breather from those for probably till Christmas.
Oh, wow. I'd imagine it's going to go right up during Christmas.
Yeah, we hope so.
Yeah, ideally, right? So they became a staple of the household in human history, axes. But do you believe that they embed themselves, if you'll pardon the axe pun, in human culture as well?
Yeah, I think they do, and I think we always say it's one of the tools you can get emotional about.
Yeah,
and because you don't get it's like, oh, here's my screwdriver, whoop-de-doo, right?
Yep.
But an axe is used now when you're not using it, in professionally, an arborist or a logger using one. But an everyday user now, you're doing it at your house. You're doing it at camp. You're using it with friends. It's something that when you're using an axe, you're building a story, right? You're building community with your friends. You're going to remember, geez, I got that axe. Remember we went out the woods, we had that big campfire, we were all together, we were having a blast, and we were all we took turns chopping wood or whatever. Or one of my favorite times with my family was when we had a power outage one winter for a couple days, and we were cooking on our wood stove, and making grilled cheese sandwiches for the kids and stuff. And I'd go out and cut wood and bring it in, and so we still talk about that story in our family. It's like the axe was part of that, because I had to chop the wood to bring it in, put it in the wood stove to make food for the family.
Yep.
And so, one of our taglines is "Axes tell stories."
They sure do.
And so we think there is something special about them. We did a collaboration with Solo Stove maybe 3 years ago.
Oh, nice.
3-4 years ago.
Yeah.
And it was all built around that. It was all built around storytelling.
Yeah.
And because for them, Solo Stove, or really any kind of fire pit, you're usually not sitting there by yourself. You're sitting there with a group of friends or family.
Yep.
And so the kit that we all kind of collaborated on was that you got one of our Allagash Cruisers. You got a set of fire starters that we made in collaboration with a guy in Vermont who we swept the wood chips from our floor that when we're hafting axes, sent them to him. He melded that together with a bunch of wax he had, and then made these little fire starters. Really cool.
That's so innovative. Just like taking a product and recycling it into fire starters.
And then the last thing we made was our guy up in Maine, Holler Leather Works, Matt Terrio, made these nice little field note covers for the field note books.
Yep.
And so it was something you had that, you had the axe, you had fire, so you had everything you needed to start a story. Oh yeah, and you got matches too. We made matchbooks for it.
Nice.
So it was really fun.
And do they have the traditional Brant and Cochran logo on them?
Yeah.
Nice.
And then we did a kind of a collaborative logo with Solo. So they had the Solo little, I think they've got a little flame that comes out. Yeah. And so we did that inside of the state of Maine, which is our logo.
Yep, absolutely. And I understand a matchbook is how Brant and Cochran kind of how you decided to make your logo? Was you found one of the old matchbooks from your grandfather, Leland Ferguson?
Yeah, because we get a lot of compliments on all our, design, and we think it's hilarious because they're like, who does the graphic design? I'm like, I don't know, someone back in the 30s. They didn't call it graphic design then. They just called it working. So so we, my grandfather owned a tool supply business in Detroit. It was called Brant and Cochran.
Yep.
So after World War II, him and his partners bought surplus Army tooling, so surplus lathes, drill presses, etc., fixed those up, then sold them back really into like the auto industry in Detroit.
Yeah.
And eventually it turned into a kind of full-scale tool supply business. So they sold hoses and bolts and all kinds of stuff. Anyways, at my wedding, my grandfather gave me one of the things he gave me was a big toolbox. It was like, here, you're married now, so you're going to need a tool, all these tools, right? So he gave me a toolbox. Inside the toolbox just happened to be a matchbook. And it was a Brant and Cochran matchbook. And that had, the Brant and Cochran logo. It had it's just simple red and white. And we used that because people were saying, well, what's the font? There wasn't any font. We had to have a graphic designer draw that.
Oh, really?
And then we just replaced part of the logo that was kind of a chevron with the state of Maine. So it's the same exact thing as my grandfather's, logo from back in the 1950s.
Yep. So I know the answer to this, but in case maybe my listeners don't, what was the decision to name it Brant and Cochran, even though your grandfather was Ferguson?
Was a Ferguson, yeah.
Yeah.
Leland Ferguson.
Leland
So
Ferguson.
my grandfather was the silent partner in Brant and Cochran because he worked in the auto industry, and they were selling machine tools into the auto industry. So that's why he was the silent partner.
Mm-hmm.
They eventually Brant left pretty quickly. He was the sales guy. And the other guy, John Cochran, and my grandfather really ran that business from right after World War II until they shut down in kind of the late 70s.
Okay.
So,
wow. And so he was the silent partner? They never decided to call it Ferguson and Cochran? Or?
Nope, they just always Brant and Cochran. I don't really know the story why they never changed it, other than I know my grandfather was working at Fisher Body, and they were probably selling stuff into some part of GM at that point.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay.
So it'd be a conflict of interest. But
yeah, definitely. It kind of almost reminds me of like, in some weird roundabout way, the Wright brothers, right? Because the Wright brothers were they like to make bicycles, and they like had a bicycle shop, and then they got into flight, right? So it's kind of like the automotive industry, and your grandfather is part of the automotive industry, and then becomes one of the most integral parts of Maine's axe making legacy. So it's an incredible transition.
Yeah, that's what we wanted to call it. It's kind of a homage to our grandpa and us coming up doing that.
Sure, absolutely. So how many employees and smiths does Brant and Cochran employ? What are you looking for in your smiths that you employ?
Presently, we have 4 full-time employees.
Oh, that's it?
Yeah, that's it.
And you make all these axes with 4 employees? Mm-hmm. Whoa.
3 of them are smiths, but they can also do other things. And then one is predominantly doing woodwork, so putting handles on axes predominantly.
Whoa, that's insane. How many axes can you make in a day?
It's really not per day. It's more per week.
Okay.
So the way that works, but we can make anywhere from 20 to 30 a week.
Wow.
So that's about maxed out for the number of people and the space we have and the tooling we have.
Mm-hmm.
So we're kind of constrained by that. But that's a good size for us. I don't think we're looking to, quadruple the size and, sell out to somebody. That's not something we're really interested in. We're interested in just creating a good community, good jobs for these people to have. It's something interesting, something different for sure.
Oh yeah, it's not a normal 9 to 5.
No, it is not.
Not even remotely.
No, and even each 9 to 5 is different from the one that's going to happen tomorrow or what you did yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, just that's the number of people we have.
Wow, I thought it would be more than 4. That's incredible. So. Sorry, give me a moment. I'm still thinking about that because do you have lead times on your axes?
Yeah.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like before, around COVID, around 2020, we were at 24, 26 weeks. We were saying in weeks, which you could also say we were 6 months or half a year back on orders.
Yep.
Weeks made it sound less horrible.
Yeah.
Right now, we're looking at anywhere from 6 to 12 weeks back on orders.
That's not bad.
We've got that down significantly.
Nice.
And it's really because we really looked at our manufacturing process. We did a project with the University of Maine's Advanced Manufacturing Center. Got some grant money for that. And we're able to kind of take more of a holistic approach to doing this. When we started this business and started smithing, it literally was, the machining was done on the back of a napkin. You know, it's how to do this. And it was a lot of trial and error. But it was very organic the way it came about. So we didn't have engineers on staff. We didn't like spend 2 years figuring out like, what's the best way to, you know, make a machine that's going to do X. We just kind of said, oh, hydraulic presses, they squish metal. It's hot. Let's get one of them. There was certainly no book that said, you know, I'm going to start how to start your axe company. Chapter 1, buy a machine. You know, there's none of that.
Mm-hmm.
And
did the hydraulic press end up working?
yeah.
Oh, nice.
We use now. We use but what the university allowed us to do is allowed us to kind of reset and think about how we were making these. And so what we changed out and why we're still able to make that number of things with less people than we had 4 or 5 years ago is we've swapped out a gas forge, which we're using propane forge, for an induction forge.
Okay. What does that mean?
Gas forge is propane, so it's what you'd think of, you know, it's like fire pouring down into the firebox. You put the cold, we call it a billet, the initial piece of steel that we have, which for the Allagash Cruiser is a piece of 1045 U.S.-made carbon steel that is 3 inches by 4 inches by 1 inch. That's what we start with. You put that in the forge, you heat it up. It takes 15 to 20 minutes to get that to forging temperature. All the while, it's off-gassing. So in the summer, our shop would be 120 degrees.
Yikes.
You know, so we'd have to work. Everyone's coming to work today at 6 and we're leaving at 10. You know, things like that.
Like 6 a.m. to 10 a.m.?
To 10 a.m.
Yeah, because it just gets too hot.
You are like passing out.
I'd imagine these few months have been really difficult.
Right, but then what's different is we're using an induction forge. That came out of our investigation with the University of Maine.
So what does that
induction
mean?
forge, it's really a fancy name for, it's a microwave oven for steel. And so what you do is you put the billet in the induction forge, and just like a microwave, it starts agitating the molecules. And that's what heats up your food in a microwave. It's what heats up the steel in an induction forge. Or an induction stove, same thing.
Mm-hmm.
But instead of waiting 15 to 20 minutes to heat that up, now we're 2.5 minutes to heat that thing.
Oh, so it speeds up the process.
Right. Speeds up the process significantly. And it's not hot. Just like a microwave, you take your hot food out of the microwave, you can put your hand right in the microwave. It's not going to do anything.
Compared to the gas, which would have been...
Right. You're going to burn. Right. Your hand's going to burn off.
Gauntlets.
Yeah. So that was one thing. And then the other thing was figuring out a new process with different sized hydraulic presses to do certain tasks. Because just like we were talking about the Allagash Cruiser, good to do a lot of things, but not one thing perfectly.
Same with the hydraulic press.
We did that initially. We tooled up one press, a 50-ton hydraulic press we had specially made for us by a company in Indiana that had multiple kind of workstations inside the press. So I can punch the eye. You know, we have a kind of a knife, once it's hot, drives it through the billet of steel to make that hole where the handle goes.
Cool. So the eye is the hole where you end up ultimately putting that friction
Correct.
handle. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
But then you'd be able to create the eye. With it, you'd move down along this big hydraulic press doing other processes. But it didn't do any of them perfectly. So there was still a lot of handwork after it was over. So we were having to spend an inordinate amount of time straightening the axe so that the axe is, if you're holding the handle in front of you, like out your arm.
Yep.
And you're staring down from the middle of the knob of the handle
it'd be off alignment.
to the middle of the top of the pole, that should be a straight line.
Oh, and it was off alignment.
And so any of your listeners out there that want to go into a Home Depot and pull up an axe, do that. They're all twisted.
Oy.
But anyway, but to get that straightness, we were having to do a lot more handwork with little grinders and things like that to get them straight. We did get them straight, but it took a lot of time.
It just was way too time consuming.
Right. And so working with the university, we split those processes that were all done in a single press into 3 different presses. So they each have pretty much a single job to do at this point. And that sped up the process as well.
Wow. That's really, really cool. So there must have been a unique challenge with Brant and Cochran while trying to preserve the historical manufacturing techniques of making these axes that maybe your grandfather used back in the day, while also optimizing production for the ever-increasing want for an Allagash Cruiser, right? So you had all these traditional methods, right? And those produced the traditional axe. And here you are trying to keep that traditional axe while using modernized methods. Was that a challenge for Brant and Cochran, do you think?
I think it's more of a challenge from the perception that people have about it, because we have people come through our shop all year, especially in summer in Maine. So tourists I got a call this morning, can we come see your shop? Sure. We take people through all the time. And sometimes they're like, well, where's the forge? Like they're expecting it, like, where's the coal forge? And everyone with their tri-corner hats on and their leather aprons and, like their pantaloons.
Where's the anvil?
And all that. Well, we use anvils a lot, but still, when people say, well, it's not, you're still using all these new machines. You're using an induction forge, man, which is like science fiction when you watch it work. And it's not traditional. It's like, well, my take on that is, if I had someone that was making axes back in the 1950s and showed us our shop, they'd use our tools. They would not go back to let's go back to coal.
Yep.
They'd want to use this stuff because it's safer, it's cleaner, and it's faster.
Prevents your smiths from passing out?
That's one of the good things about it, yes.
I'd imagine so.
But, so it's still a lot of, each axe is touched by hands. We do use hammers and anvils all the time. It's not heat up a block of steel, press a button, go get a cup of coffee, axe head pops out the other side. It's nothing like that at all. So we're just really using our hands and our tools in a little bit different way than someone that would have been making axes back in the 1940s or 1960s or 1890s.
Yep.
But the steps you have to go through are still all identical. You're still punching an eye. You're still grinding it to size. You're still sharpening it. You're still hafting it. You're still putting a leather sheath on it. You're still doing the exact same steps.
Yes, absolutely. So while you were saying that, I just realized another one of those axe puns is having an axe to grind. That's another one. I'm learning. I'm figuring it out.
There you go.
Excellent. So you have 3 smiths, right? 3 smiths and 1 person who kind of does woodwork. How does the average person start smithing as a career or a hobby, right? Because obviously your smiths are among some of the best in Maine, no doubt, because the axes you produce are the best in Maine, in my opinion. And again, the Allagash Cruiser. Have you ever considered utilizing your forge and offering classes for fledgling smiths to come in and try it out?
We've talked about that. Our problem right now is we don't have enough time to do something like that.
Sure.
It's more of a time thing than anything else. But the nice thing is there's plenty of places here in Maine to learn.
Really?
Yes, there's the New England School of Metalwork is up in Auburn. They have intro to blacksmithing classes. They have welding classes. They have knife making classes. It's a fantastic school. And actually, they helped us out a lot when we got started. The staff there and a lot of the smiths and the blacksmithing community here in southern Maine helped us out significantly when we started, because we did a big presentation to all these guys that were super famous smiths and said, here's what we want to do, guys. We want to make axes. And they all looked at us like we were nuts. But they all helped us because the challenges that they identified, all of them were true, which were: 1, you're not going to be able to find anyone to sell you steel.
Has that been a unique challenge?
In the quantity, it took us about 6 months to find someone to sell us steel.
Oh, wow.
You're not going to be able to find any machines that are right size. They're either going to be hobbyist type machines, or they're going to be, machines that take up an entire room in a building. And then the third thing is you're not going to be able to find people to do this.
Really?
And so they were right on all three of those counts. I mean, it just took us a while to figure it out.
Yep.
Because the steel problem was, we think we buy a lot of steel, but we don't. The steel distributors, they want to sell you train cars full of steel.
Sure.
Loads,
like
truckloads.
Making boats for BIW.
Or whatever, exactly. They want to sell you that kind of stuff. So we're buying steel, 500, 1,000 pounds at a time, which is it sounds like a lot, but it's not a lot.
Not really, no.
And then, so we finally found a distributor outside of Cleveland, which makes sense. There's a lot of steel business out in the Midwest.
Yep.
And to some extent, they're kind of doing it as a favor to us. It's
really?
Cool. It's cool that we get to distribute steel to these people making axes.
It's just kind of a niche little thing for them.
Yeah. And it's like they're not making any money off us. They're not putting their kids through college selling this amount of steel. So, but we did find some people, which was great.
Excellent.
And then the machines, we did find this company in Indiana that makes really hobbyist hydraulic presses, but they were starting to make some bigger things. And so we kind of caught them at the right time. So that 50-ton press they made for us was a design that they had, but then they were able to modify it to some degree for us specifically.
Wow.
So we were lucky with that. And then people, we're just very lucky. I think it's no one came to us as I take that back. A couple of guys initially were blacksmiths and do make axes, but make axes in the more traditional way.
Mm-hmm.
Coal forges. They're bending the steel around an axe, around a drift to make it, so it's not like a single piece.
Yep.
And they're still making fantastic stuff out there today. But we did end up finding some people that could do this and training people. And we hired a couple of people were Mecca art students. The one woman that was our head blacksmith who just left at the end of June to go move down to Brooklyn with her partner.
Nice.
But she was a ceramics artist here at Mecca.
And she ended up becoming a blacksmith.
And you think about it, it's the same stuff. It's just way more dangerous.
That's so badass.
It's just you're molding stuff, right?
Yep.
So the same mindset of doing that, of working with clay, is working with steel. It's really the same kind of thing. And then one of the last people that he ended up leaving, unfortunately, just for different reasons, but he came out of a kitchen environment, like a small kitchen environment, like working food service.
Like in food service.
And we're like, okay, let's hire him. And we did. And it was like, oh my God, this is wonderful. Because you think a short order, like a lot of blacksmithing is time management.
Oh, yeah.
Because the steel's hot. You pull it out of the forge. You have so many minutes, a minute or two maybe.
Before it cools
to
down.
Work the metal. It's no different than in working as a short order cook in a restaurant where you're like, okay, like we're doing a steak over here, so I got to start the broccoli now because that's got to be ready at the same time. And you're moving around in a small area, which is the same thing with smithing. You've got the forge and your anvil's right next to you and your press is right next to you, and it's all like a dance you're doing to get that done. No different than working in a kitchen. So we're looking at resumes for people like, did you work in a kitchen?
Wow. So that's interesting.
And we want to train people up.
Yeah.
Because it's not, blacksmithing is certainly an art, but we don't pretend that we're blacksmithing. I mean, we're blacksmithing, but it's more of a production process we're going through. That includes some blacksmithing.
Well, if you ever need apprentices that you need to train, I do know a group that would absolutely benefit from a large amount of blunt axes of varying weights and historically accurate designs. So we could definitely chat about that. If you ever need to train somebody in axe making, I know a group that absolutely needs axes. That Booher group would really benefit from having those. Having stuff that your smiths could make, because all the axes that they get are forged in the Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, there's a really good forges over there.
Absolutely, yeah, and all the armor they get and everything is over in Ukraine. The problem with that is the lead times are anywhere from a year to a year and a half, and it's just not sustainable. So it'd be really nice to find a smith a little closer to home, for sure. Yeah, that is, if you ever need to train people, for sure. So I understand as well that the wedge axe, the Allagash Cruiser, is based off a design you procured from a museum. How
Yeah.
difficult was that process?
Really surprisingly easy.
Oh, yeah?
So there's three really good forestry museum or logging museums in Maine.
Yep.
And I'd urge everyone to go check them out. One is up in Patten. So
Yeah, the Patten.
The Patten Lumbermen's Museum
Yeah.
up north, up by the the Woods and Waters
National Monument.
And that museum is where we borrowed the axe head off the wall that we used as the prototype for the first Allagash Cruiser, which we still have in our shop.
You still have the axe head?
We were up every time we go up to the museum, we bring it. We're like, "Do you guys want it back?" Like, "Nah, we got plenty of them. You guys can just hold on to it." Still has like the little curated the number, it's item number 1, 2, 3, 4, or whatever, little tag stuck on it. But that's a good museum to see exhibits on logging, and they have an extensive collection of axes, old chainsaws from the 1950s that weigh 80 pounds to handle.
That weigh way too much.
2-person chainsaws. They get all kinds of stuff. It's really a nice museum. The other one, there's the Maine Forestry Museum, which is in Rangeley. We were just there this last weekend. Rangeley has a logging festival, which we take part in. We get to march in the parade, which is a blast, and vend up there. And they have a nice museum with a lot of exhibits. And the final one is the Maine Forest and Lumber Logging Museum, I believe, and it's up in Bradley.
Okay.
And that's more of up by Bangor, and it's more of a living history museum. They've got a working water-powered sawmill. They've got buildings on the property that show what life would have been like back in logging camp. So it's pretty cool. It's really nice, and they've got working Lombards. So the Lombard was the original log hauler, steam engine log hauler that was built before World War I.
Oh, wow.
It was the very first tracked vehicle, so like a tank track.
Whoa.
That's what they ran through. So the tank tracks are all based on what these Lombards were using.
I was going to say, yeah, because I believe the first iterations of the tank, and I'm no military historian by any stretch of the means, but I know that the original iterations of the tank were I believe the Mark V from Britain, right?
Mm-hmm.
Britain was the first to bring tanks into the Great War. And so it's very interesting that America looked at the Lombards and were like, yeah, that'll do. Just take that and put guns on it or something.
Exactly what they did.
Yeah.
And they have working steam Lombards. So
wow.
They have a day. I think it's called Heavy Metal Day or something like that. And it's where they stoke the fires up and get the Lombards going. It's really
sick,
cool machine to see operating.
Yep, I don't doubt that for a minute. So you got it from the Lumber Museum in Patten.
Yeah.
And they were just like, yeah, you can keep it.
Yeah. I mean,
That's really cool. So in your opinion, let's get down to the brass tacks here. What makes a quality axe a quality axe?
Yeah, because we get that question a lot.
I have a story about this, which is why I want your opinion on this.
So yeah, we get that question a lot. It's like, well, your axes are $300 or so. What makes them better than the $50 axe I can get at Home Depot, right?
Yeah, the Fisker's 8X27.
Now, Fisker's is a pretty decent axe. I'm not going to poo-poo the Fisker's axe. The Fisker's, I hate the handle on it, that composite handle.
Yeah, like that.
But the steel on that's nice. That's if you could saw that thing off and put that on a wood handle, it'd be pretty decent.
You have a piece. Yeah, you have a good piece.
It'd be pretty decent. Yeah, the Fisker's steel's good. But anyways, but what's the difference? The difference is the steel. You start with that. So the actual steel we're using is 1045 carbon steel that we get from a mill in South Carolina. So it comes to us as something that's created to be a single type of steel.
Mm-hmm.
The steel that's on a Home Depot axe, that's basically melted down cars and just junk, right? And so that it's not going to hold an edge. Mm-hmm. That kind of steel. We always say, if you like sharpening your axe, then go to Home Depot, because that's all you're going to do is sharpen your axe.
Yikes.
Whereas our axes, the Gramfors, that more premium axes, they use better steel.
Yep.
And so you're not going to have to really sharpen your axe. It's going to keep an edge for a long time. You should sharpen your axe, but it's going to keep an edge for a long time. So the
A lot
steel
longer
is
than-
a lot longer.
Yep.
I mean, we've had axes brought back to us that guides have used and just beat up.
Oh, yeah.
And the guy's like, wow, this is still sharp. How much do you sharpen this? He goes, I haven't sharpened this in 2 years.
Yep, that sounds about right.
And anyways, so the steel's one thing. The handle's another thing. We talked about the handles.
Yep.
So we're using premium hickory handles. We design the handles to fit on the axe a certain way, to have a certain balance to them. And we give them, most of our hickory handles are turned by an Amish gentleman in Ohio.
Oh, wow.
There's no hickory here in Maine to make handles out of. We've recently started working with a company in New York State that's making ash handles for us.
Oh, that's interesting.
His son is a logger in northern New Hampshire.
Yep.
And brings down log loads to him, and he's in the Finger Lakes region of New York.
Oh, so he's out by like Saranac, like in the
He's
Saranac area.
on Conesus Lake. One of the smaller lakes, but out that same area.
And his son is
a logger
in like the Cabot area, like that area of northern New Hampshire.
I'm not sure where he
Great
is.
area, by the way.
Yeah,
Oh
I'm
my
not sure.
gosh,
Yeah.
Mount Cabot's one of the best mountains.
And good cheese.
Great cheese. Although is Cabot Vermont? Is that
That's
in
Cabot,
Vermont?
Vermont. Yeah, that's Vermont.
Yeah,
That's
Is it?
Vermont.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it must,
right?
I think it's Vermont.
I don't know.
Yeah, but Mount
Only there was a
Cabot.
machine that would tell us where that is.
Oh man. Well, okay. Here we go. I'm here. I got this. We're looking up.
It is Vermont.
Cabot cheese is in Vermont.
There we
Okay.
go.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know, there's some really good outdoor products that come out of Vermont. Darn
There
Tough
are.
socks. Best
Yeah.
of the best.
Yeah.
Best of the best. Yep.
Mhm.
And Mount Cabot is in New Hampshire. It's in the northern New Hampshire
Okay.
area, which is significantly different than the Presidential Range or the Pemigewasset
Mhm.
Range. That entire area just feels like a completely different vibe.
Yeah,
So-
not spent a lot of time up there.
Oh, you got to make it out there. Mount Cabot, great spot,
Huh.
good hike. There's some good camping around it. Everybody has like mixed feelings on Cabot, but I personally loved Cabot. Some folks are like, "Oh man, you gotta park, and then you have to make it before the fishery closes." And it's like, nah, man, just enjoy your day. Maybe camp. There's a nice lake, Mystery. I think it's called Mystery Pond or Unknown Pond. It's like right there. It's really, really nice. So yeah, that is really, really cool. The reason I ask you about what makes a good axe is because I was at a particular outdoor store in the Freeport area that will not be named. And I really wanted, and I still to this day, if I haven't made it blatantly obvious, as a Maine guide, I'd really like a Brant and Cochran because their axes are just essentially part of Maine, right? But I was at said store looking for an axe, right? Because I'm trying to create what's called a living traditions trip, right? And it's this trip where you dress in all traditional gear, you use all traditional equipment, and you teach folks, maybe folks who have never been outside. This is not the kind of trip for somebody who's hiked Denali, right? That's not the target audience. The idea is to teach them about what Maine guiding looked like pre-World War I and maybe even post-World War I. I'm trying to create two different curriculums and using all the stuff that you would have used back then versus all the modern gear you see today. So in lieu of maybe like an Osprey backpack, you'd use a pack basket. In lieu of a black diamond hard shell, you'd use a wool Mackinaw, right? So I'm still trying to create that and still trying to compile all the gear. And one of the things was an axe, right? Because the axe is, I mean, like you said, you've had Maine guides who are just like, yep, I carry an axe and I use it all the time. You know, it's one of the essential pieces of that kit. So I find this Hudson Bay axe. And I'm like, oh, wow, it's actually a nice looking axe. You know, it's historical looking. I'm like, well, maybe I'll have to use this. And I take it out of the case and I start to look at it. And the top is screwed on. And I was like, maybe I'll use something else. Because I was like, if the head is screwed on to the handle, that makes me a little nervous.
Yeah.
That makes me a little nervous. So I decided to not use that for sure. And then I also understand that Brant and Cochran has leather collars that you put on your axes.
Yeah.
Other than making them incredibly stylish, even more stylish than they already were, what is the purpose of that?
Overstrike protection. So like if you, actually the story about that was, we service our axes too. Like
Sure.
we have Maine guides that come in like every March
Yep.
and just say, hey, can you tune up my axe? And it takes us 10 seconds because we have all the equipment.
Sure.
So if you buy something from us and you're local and you want to get your axe sharpened, you just come over our shop and we'll sharpen it for you.
Oh, man.
But Matt from Holler Leather Works just happened to be in our shop one day, and when these guys came in, it wasn't a guide, but someone brought in and said, hey, I need to get my axe rehandled because he had overstruck. And overstriking is when you're swinging at a log, you strike, the axe head goes beyond the thing you're chopping,
Yep.
so you hit the handle.
Oof.
So on the other side of, the side closer to you.
Yep.
And so this guy had done that so much that there was about a quarter of the handle just gone, just eaten away. Now the axe head was still securely on there, so that tells you how tight that friction fit is.
Yeah.
But so Matt, our leather guy, just happened to be in the shop. He's like, we can make collars. They make things to go around there, which we knew of. But so he's just like, we got to make those. And so we started making those maybe 3 years ago, and that's really what they're for.
Yeah.
So that when you do overstrike, it protects the handle.
And prevents it from splintering.
Right. And
That's
sometimes
really
you'll see
cool.
like a maul that'll have like a big rubber collar on it on
Yep.
the end of it. And that's when you're swinging a maul, like, number one, they weigh a lot more, and you're swinging them a lot harder.
That's a lot of weight that's going to
Right.
come down on that handle.
Exactly.
Yep. No, for sure.
That's what the collars do.
Yep. And you also restore axes, and you've restored hundreds of different kinds and different heads and different styles. That must take a lot of information and knowing, okay, this is this style or this is this style, and then restoring all these different kinds of axes. What is that process like?
Yeah, we do. That's actually how we got started when we started this business in 2015. The first
Okay.
thing we did was we knew we wanted to make an axe, but the first thing we had to do is figure out like how do axes work?
Yeah.
How do you put a handle on one? Like
Yep.
what do they do? All that kind of thing. And so we started with axe restoration,
Mhm.
and we're still doing it to this day. I just mailed out 2 of them yesterday.
Nice.
One guy's in Iowa and the other guy was in Michigan, I think, somewhere out in the Midwest. But so we get a lot of those. Just, hey, I found this axe, my grandpa's axe. Can you fix this for me? Or we just bought a property up in northern Maine. We looked in the barn and there was a bunch of axe heads. Can you redo this?
Wow.
We've restored axes. A couple ones were. Guy sent us one from San Francisco. He was redoing his house or apartment in San Francisco and found an axe head in the wall when he took the
Just
the
like
plaster wall.
embedded in
like,
the
no,
wall?
just like in the inside the wall. Yeah.
Huh. Wonder how that got there.
Who knows? But it was probably at least 150 years old.
Yep.
We've restored axes people found fishing, and they're just been in the water for 100 years.
Wow.
Completely pockmarked, wrecked, but they want to get it restored because they went on a fishing trip with their uncle.
Yep.
And this is going to remind me of my uncle and whatever. So
Yep.
we do. That's where we get back to like axes tell stories. And so with each restoration job we do, there's a story about it, most likely.
And
It's
some
not-
of those stories are crazy.
So the one we were talking about, trade axes, we got a call in the spring this year from a guy in Canada, up near International Falls, Minnesota. And he had 3 trade axes that he had found out in the woods. So these axes are probably from the 1600s or 1700s.
Whoa.
So they look like look like tomahawks.
Yep.
Just had the heads. And we said, well, where did you get these things? It's like Indiana Jones, man. These things should be in a museum.
Yep.
And he's like, oh, I find them all the time because he's on one of the old trappers' trade routes from back in the 1600s and 1700s.
Yeah.
So that's where his camp is, up in Canada. And so he sent those 3 of us. We made handles for him. He said he wanted us to tune them up. We're like, we're not touching these things, man. They're too old. We don't want to it's like first do no harm, right? Like a doctor's creed, first do no harm. And but getting to handle those things in our house and touch those things that are 400 years old
And probably
350 years old.
Yeah, very integral to the history of North America.
Yeah, absolutely.
And European settlement in North America.
Absolutely.
And the guy's just casually like, yeah, I just find these in the woods. Can you restore this for us?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And but we've got like axes, all different kinds of axes, double bits, single bits, big ones, small ones, all from all over the country to do. So we probably restore, I don't know, maybe between 5 and 10 a month.
Oh, wow.
And then we also will sometimes buy people, axe collectors will buy their collections and then fix them up ourselves and sell them online.
Oh,
and usually
cool.
the ones we do in that are patterns or sizes of axes that we don't make. So we used to make a double bit. We haven't made a double bit for a while.
Sure.
So we'll sell double bits or hatchets. We don't make a true hatchet. So we'll make one of those, or we'll restore some hatchets.
Very, very cool. And then how long is the restoration process compared to creating a new axe from steel?
Oh, it's a lot faster.
Oh, it's a lot faster.
It depends. It just depends on and each restoration's a little bit different. Some are just, hey, can you just put a handle on it? That's not a big deal.
Sure.
Some are, can you just sharpen my axe?
Mm-hmm.
Some are like the guy found this in the river. It's completely destroyed. Can you bring this back to life? That's a lot more involved.
Yep.
Removing the rust, reprofiling it. If like you've used something like a hammer,
yep,
the steel will mushroom around it, and then we're grinding off the mushrooming. So there's some additional things we do. It just depends on what the axe looks like when it reaches our hands.
And there's a lot of care that has to go into that. Yeah.
Because you're dealing with someone's story. So it's kind of scary, when you're dealing with some of that stuff, because you're like, you can't drop it on the ground and chip it. So it's like we're very respectful of those axes that come in here, even if they're like a no-name, it's like doesn't have a name. It's not a famous pattern. There's no famous stamp on it, but those customers, that's a super important thing for them and their family.
Yeah,
and their story. So we treat every axe, whether it's a fancy black raven that you buy for a couple $1,000 to something someone finds at a garage sale for $1.
Yep.
We treat everything the same.
Wow. And I totally understand that is someone's story, because I was in a antique store in Waterville, which I understand is near Oakland, which was a huge town when it comes to Maine's axe making. And I've been looking for a paddle, right? I've been looking for a canoe paddle as part of that Living Traditions trip. And I've been considering getting, do you know Shaw and Tenney?
Oh, yeah.
Shaw and Tenney, legendary paddles, right? Some of the best paddles in the Northeast, easy. I've been considering getting a Shaw and Tenney, but, as I'm still collaborating and developing this business, investing in a Shaw and Tenney it's a big investment, and rightfully so. And I was in this antique store, and I'm just looking around with my mother, and lo and behold, I find a canoe paddle, and I'm like, wait a minute. And I grab it, and it's an old beaver tail style, right? And the beaver tail is like the Maine guide kind of design, right? All the Maine guides have beaver tails because it allows for the pushing of more water compared to your square paddles that you see very commonly sold. Those are great if you're going to canoe once or twice at your lake house with your family. They're not great if this is part of your lifestyle.
Yeah.
So I find this old canoe paddle, and it's all covered in like this old heavy black varnish. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I've been restoring this canoe paddle, and the care that goes into it, it's like you're gingerly doing it. I'm like, my roommate's like, oh, use 80-bit. And I'm like, I don't want to use 80-bit. I don't want to get rid of the story of this piece. And then I used 80-bit, and I'm like, oh yeah, okay, maybe using 80-bit was the play here. Just getting rid of that old caked on varnish. So I can put linseed oil on it and ultimately get a marine spar, and then ultimately end up using it. So same thing, these pieces of outdoor equipment, like you said, you can get emotional over, right? And they have significance. Axes are one of them, canoe paddles, pack baskets, even pack baskets,
Sure.
And I just feel like, compared to, like you said, a screwdriver, it's like, my screwdriver broke. Darn, you know what I mean? But, if your canoe paddle breaks or your axe breaks, that's a much different story.
Right.
That is
if you come to our shop, you'll see we have our canoe paddle from one of our canoe trips in the Boundary Waters up in Minnesota from 1978, something like that.
I've heard the Boundary Waters are incredible.
They're beautiful. That's where we did all of our paddling.
Really?
Yeah, all of our wilderness paddling was done up there.
You ever go to the UP? Michigan?
No.
Really?
We just kind of stuck with the Boundary Waters. We've been doing that since the 1970s. That's where my dad took us, and that's where we went.
That's
And
awesome.
last time we went was in 2019 to spread my dad's ashes up there.
Man, was it still as beautiful as it was back then?
It's so familiar. If you're familiar with northern Maine, it looks identical to northern Maine. It's the same rock formations, the same type of lakes, same type of streams.
Similar latitudes, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's very familiar.
Yeah, that's really cool. And do you and your brother go there primarily?
Yeah, and our partner Barry. So it was me and my brother Steve and our partner Barry Worthing. So he's been on 2 of these canoe trips with us in the last decade.
Nice.
Up there. But it's been a lot of family.
Yep. How long are your canoe trips generally?
Usually, the last 2 we did with one we did with my dad when he was 76. So that was I think only 4 overnights.
Sure. Still really impressive.
Usually 5 overnights usually.
Nice.
Because the permits I think are 6 nights is the longest you can do a permit up there.
And the Boundary Waters, is that Park Service?
It's all
Forest Service.
It's Forest Service.
Okay.
It's a wilderness area, Boundary Waters Wilderness Area. So I'm not sure who that. It's closed right now because of the fires up there.
Yeah, in Ontario, right?
Yeah, in Ontario. Yeah, it's not in the Boundary Waters, but they've closed down because we get updates from our outfitter that I follow on Instagram. So she every morning is like, "This is what's happening up here."
Yikes.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at it now. It is U.S. Department of Agriculture Forest Service.
Forest Service.
Because
okay.
it's part of Superior National Forest
Got it.
in Minnesota.
Yeah.
But I've heard the Boundary Waters are incredible. And it's called the Boundary Waters because I'm assuming it's the Boundary Waters between U.S. and Canada.
Correct. And then
Nice.
on the other side of the Canadian border, there's I don't know if it's a national park or that's also a wilderness area, but you can canoe up into Canada.
Do you have to get different permits or
It's
are there
really strict now as far as getting permits to go on the Boundary Waters. So you
man.
can have there's not necessarily a lottery, but if you were planning to go next year, you'd be working on your trip right now.
Ugh. Okay.
And group size can only be, I think it's 9 people per group.
Yeah, that's
So even if you want to take different size groups, you can't even be on the same route because they know you're going to like camp together and that.
Mhm.
So, it's pretty kind of regulated, but it's all for the good. You know, it's still pristine.
Yeah, and the party size is largely in conjunction, and the goal is to keep LNT, right? Leave no trace principles.
Correct.
Same thing happened in Baxter State Park following the incident that I've talked about on a previous episode with a trail runner who finished a FKT of the Appalachian Trail, and on top of Katahdin, which is a pristine area, right? When Thoreau climbed Katahdin, he was like, we are not supposed to be up here. It is that pristine.
Mhm.
And what happened was the trail runner made it up there. There was a media crew waiting for him, way too many people on the summit, right? And that kind of opened the door for conversations about commercialization of Katahdin, which Baxter has always been like, hard stop, absolutely not. And helicopters were flying overhead, which disrupted, the wildlife and just kind of ruins the pristineness of Baxter. And then he sprayed champagne, and now there's a bunch of sugar all over these super, super delicate alpine plants. And that attracts bears because bears have really good noses, right? And bees, and it just became a whole problem. So that is why those limits in terms of your party exist in some of these places, especially places that are super focused on keeping it pristine, like the Boundary Waters, like Baxter. You're not going to see that party limit in a place like Acadia because it's federal, right? And the preservation of Acadia, while important, is not the ultimate goal, right? Versus the Boundary Waters, which they want to keep that as pristine as possible. They want to keep their room spotless, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And that was another interesting thing, going back to the Living Traditions trips, was coming up with a way to, because Maine guides traditionally usually built shelters, like they built lean-tos whenever they'd make camp. And while that's historically accurate, it's not LNT either. So I had to come up with a way to a way to balance the two in a way where it was still immersive, but I'm not sleeping in an Ozark Trail, right? Because if you come out and you're wearing all wool and you got the wool cap on and then you go and sleep in an Ozark Trail, immersion's broken. And ultimately, what I came up with, I consulted the Civil War, because I know reenactors use what are called half wedges, which are basically half of a pup tent, right? And you'd have your wedge partner, and you'd have this piece of waxed, I believe it's waxed canvas.
Probably,
yeah. And you'd use it as a lean-to, right? Solo. But you could also combine it with your partner, your tent partner, I think is what they were called. I have a Civil War reenactor coming on in a little while, and he's probably going to correct me on that. But I did my best. And you'd actually connect the two and create a pup tent. And I was like, this is perfect, right? Because now you can have a solo guide, and the solo guide can have it as a lean-to, which are traditionally what Maine guides were building out of firs and pines and things of that nature. And if you do it with a co-guide, now you have a pup tent and you're living large. So just LNT is very important in places like the Boundary Water.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So anyways, not talking about LNT or living traditions trips anymore. I understand that you largely spent a majority of your career as the president and co-owner, of Brant and Cochran. But what work did you do previously that allowed you to establish such a successful business?
Well, the jury's still out on whether it's successful or not.
I don't know about that. I mean, I think it's very successful.
But my brother and I went to a small liberal arts school in Ohio, College of Worcester.
Yep.
And one thing those liberal arts educations teach you is that you can do pretty much anything. And you just got to do the research, put the time in, and find the right people to help you. And so, I'm not a blacksmith. I worked in machine shops all through high school and college in Detroit with my grandpa. Not for him, but for his friends. Each summer he'd go like, Mark, you're working this year with John over here. You're working with Jim at his factory this summer.
Oh, wow.
So I did factory work for those summers in high school and college. But after that, I was a lawyer. I was a litigation attorney for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
And then got out of that because I had a friend that went to the College of Worcester with me that had a small software company. And he contacted me to see if I knew anyone that could help him run that. And I said, well, that doesn't sound too hard. So I quit my being a lawyering, and I joined up with my friend Jeff, and we grew our software business from 1998 till we sold it in 2015. So I've only had 3 jobs. I was a lawyer, I helped run a software company, and now I make axes. So
that's a
pretty straight line from con law and law school to helping design hydraulic presses. It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, totally. Not a roller coaster at all. Not even remotely. That's really cool. So what setbacks did Brant and Cochran have in the beginning that maybe made you question if Brant and Cochran was going to make it, and how did you persevere through those?
Well, I think like you mentioned, some of the challenges were just physical, like getting where we can get steel, where are we going to get these machines, where are we going to find a place to have our business? I mean, that was a big thing, is trying to find space here in Portland, or we're in South Portland, but trying to find space like that. So, I'm sitting here, I got stuff I'm worrying about right now.
Sure.
And I think what's helped us get through all of that, and I'm speaking for really everybody in the company, including all our team members, has really been the support of the maker community in Maine, and the support of the kind of the axe community. I mean, we started this, there's a pretty big community of axe enthusiasts in this state. There's a Maine Axe and Tool Collectors group. There's a big following on Facebook. There's a group on Facebook called Axe Junkies that has, I think, 50,000 members.
Are those all Mainers? Oh, they're
no,
around
just
the
all
world.
over the world. But I mean, so when we started this, I mean, we thought, geez, who's going to take us idiots seriously? I mean, we don't know anything. I mean, we don't know anything about this, you know. And when we started this up, I think the people of Maine, the maker community, the blacksmith community, got behind us and helped us. And we wouldn't be where we are today without that support.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been really humbling. And there's no way we could have done this without all those different elements. There's also various industry groups that have helped us. Maine Outdoor Brands is a group that we're involved in very heavily.
Yes.
And we've relied upon them and their members for all kinds of different types of advice and help and collaborations. And so you really learn if you want to do something by yourself, you're not going to be successful.
It takes a village.
It does. And, we've been blessed to be here in this state where, because it's a small state, I think, and because it's a smaller population, everyone has to rely upon each other.
And that's kind of been a tenet of Maine I haven't lived here very long. I'm 26, but that's been a tenet of Maine for as long as I've known Maine, you know, is that people rely on each other. And the community aspect of Maine is so strong compared to places with larger population densities.
Yeah.
And
it's you have to. It's not like in a big population, you can choose who you get to hang out with, who you want to do stuff with. Here, you don't got a choice.
Not really.
You need to know someone who's going to get your truck out of the ditch.
Oh, yeah.
You know, who you got to know. You've got to have those kind of relationships to live here.
Yep.
And that's what makes it. I think that's what makes this a special place to live. I think it's for some people. It's not for all people.
Yeah, for sure.
Because people do know your business, and I think that's what's helped us survive and thrive. Has been that. But I don't know if we could. We've talked about that. I don't know if we could have done this business anywhere else in the United States.
Yeah, and you're preserving a piece of Maine history with the Allagash Cruiser, with the Patten, right? You're preserving Maine's history, and I think for a lot of people that's really important.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's what we're saying. We're making heirloom quality products that are going to last 100 years. We tell people we have the dumbest business plan ever. We're going to sell you an axe, and your grandkids aren't even going to buy one from us because they'll still be using that same axe.
Yeah, but it is a Brant and Cochran, and I think it's one of those things where I think there's a saying, right? It's better to have a good name than good oil, right? And Brant and Cochran is kind of in my opinion, and I will stand by my opinion and die on this hill, it's one of the legendary axe makers in the business. Maybe that's because I'm from Maine, so I'm impartial, and I'm convinced that one of your axes are some of the best in the world. And I'm not the only one, right? Like Field and Stream said that the Allagash Cruiser is one of the 4 best axes made in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the question is, right, how many iterations of the Cruiser did it take to get to that point?
Well, we started the business in 2015. We moved over to our shop over in South Portland.
Where did you start prior to that?
We were at Thompson's Point. We were in a maker space at Thompson's Point, and we were, if you go to Brick South over there, that was our shop. We were part of the Open Bench Project, which still exists here today, and that was another group that helped us immensely. Wouldn't have been able to take off. We wouldn't have had a space to even start to learn about anything without the guys over at Open Bench.
Sure.
But that started in that building in Brick South in Thompson's Point. We had an 8-foot by 8-foot cubicle. That's where our business started.
An 8-foot by 8-foot cubicle is where
in a maker space that had shared tooling.
Wow.
Our little space was a 8x8.
That's like nothing.
It had like chicken wire and stuff around it. It looked like the stage in Blues Brothers. It was awesome.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
But moved over there in 2017, and at that point we kind of knew how we wanted to make these. We did a kind of a GoFundMe, Indiegogo Kickstarter kind of thing.
Yep.
Raised some money to buy a small hydraulic press, a gas forge, anvil, some tooling. We had some of that stuff, but did that, and then for about a year and a half, we spent trying to make axes and throwing out a bunch of stuff.
Yep.
And so the first Allagash Cruiser was shipped out of our shop in April of 2018. So,
do you know who bought it?
Um,
I'm just curious, like, is there
yes,
like
I'm
a first
trying to
chair
remember.
situation?
No, yeah, I do know who. The first person to bought it was the Maine Office of Tourism because they used it for an auction for the Maine Tourism Conference.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so
Yep.
that was, or it was a giveaway or something like that.
Yep. That's really
so
cool.
that's who took the first one.
Cool. And I understand, and like you just said, you're a member of Maine Outdoor Brands. One of my unofficial Between the Piers goals is to get as many of those brands on this podcast as possible. You're actually number 2. Number 1 was She Hikes Mountains. Yeah.
Sure.
Sarah's incredible.
Yeah.
And she's actually attempting a Appalachian Trail 3-month attempt next year.
That's insane.
Isn't it? And she's been training, and she's a guide, and and she's so hardcore. She's out there in the White Mountains all the time training for this 3-month, 25 miles a
When's
day.
she starting?
I don't know.
Next year?
Next year.
Yeah, next April or something, whenever you start.
It would be probably in her best interest to start later than the traditional Appalachian Trail thru hiker does, just to make sure she doesn't get snowed in the Smokies.
Right.
Because that snow and
then she would slow her
and
down.
then it just
Sure.
slow her right down
Yeah,
and completely hijack the situation. So she has a unique problem where she has to time it where she doesn't hit snow in the Smokies and she doesn't hit snow in the Whites a couple months later, because snow in the Whites just decides to stay until like
forever.
July.
Or you can have snow.
Yep, exactly. So it's a very unique challenge, and she's really dedicated to it, and I think it's an absolutely incredible challenge for her, and I cannot wait to see that. Point being, Maine Outdoor Brands, if anybody who is listening to this is a member of Maine Outdoor Brands and you want to be on my podcast, send me an email, please. I want you. I want everybody. I want this podcast.
I can help you with all that.
Please and
That's no
thank
problem.
you. Yes, actually, yeah. Let's chat about that for sure. So, what is the most tedious part of making an axe? The make or break moment.
Well, the most tedious and part of it's grinding.
Grinding.
That's the kind of the sucky job.
Yeah.
Is grinding, because you basically we forge out the head to a rough forged shape, so it's starting to look like an axe.
Yep.
We take a pattern, an aluminum pattern, we slide it through the eye of the axe, and it's supposed to be what the profile is going to look like. We literally take a Sharpie,
Oh,
and
really?
draw on it, and then you stand in front of a grinder and grind away the excess.
Yep.
It's like the sculptor finding the sculpture inside
statue
the piece of marble. Yeah.
Yep.
But that's the thing it's probably the most dangerous thing we do.
Oh, really?
Because you can't wear gloves. Because it's all a feel thing. And so you're holding this axe head next to a grinding belt.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a 6-inch by 72-inch long metal grinding belt that's rolling at about 7,800 RPM.
Whoa.
Sounds like a jet engine taking off when you turn the thing on. And that's what allows us to grind off the most material the quickest is that machine.
Wow.
So that's probably the most tedious part of it. It's also the dirtiest. I mean, you're wearing a respirator. In the summer, it's hot. You're wearing, long sleeve shirts and so forth. So that's probably the part that people don't like doing the most.
Makes sense. That is why there's a phrase that's named after it, I suppose, having an axe to grind.
Yes.
Would you say that that's the make or break part of making an axe?
The make or break part really comes at heat treating. That's where things can go sideways after you've spent, by the time we put it in a heat treating kiln, you've done pretty much all the work on that axe other than the final sharpening.
Mm-hmm.
And so if the heat treating goes wrong, you've wasted 4 or 5 hours making an axe head.
Wow.
And it can happen. We use these tempering ovens to heat the axes up before, the quenching in water. You see the blacksmiths doing that, or in oil.
Like they put it in the water and it flames
steam goes
up.
up. Yeah, they would do oil. We're quenching in brine because that's what the folks in Oakland used to use. They used to use water. We just go down to the ocean, grab salt water. That's where we get our brine from. We have to add a bunch more Morton salt to it, but
nice.
We say quenched in the waters of the
quenched in the waters of the Atlantic.
Ocean. Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
I don't know how much ocean water is left in that right now because we have to keep adding to it. But anyways, but that's the point at which if there's something wrong with the quench, you can get cracks in the axe head. So that's really the moment of truth.
Yeah. So that's the make or break part of making an axe. What is the make or break moment of making a business?
I think it's different for different people.
Sure.
So I think for us, we're not driven necessarily, like I said, we're not making this business to get it bigger and sell it or make a ton of money. We did this. Yep. This is my last rodeo. So I'm like, we're building this up so that we can have a business that lasts 100 years for somebody to take over.
Sure.
My daughter's one of the blacksmiths. The people that work for us, hopefully we have something that we can pass on to folks. And so for us, the make or break part of our business is having a safe, fun working environment and creating a team that wants to do this. And I think we've been successful at that. And so that's for us is more about the process than the process and the end product, as opposed to looking at a balance sheet or a profit and loss thing or what awards we won or whatever. It's more about people wanting to come to work every day to do a really hard job.
Yeah.
I mean, they call them blacksmiths for a reason. They leave and they are filthy.
Yep.
And it's a tough job.
Yeah.
And so we've had people like, I want to be a blacksmith. I want to make axes. I'm like, no, you don't. Making axes, go stand in front of a grinder for 4 hours.
Yeah. Then
covered in black, little shards of metal
shavings.
It's all over you. But I think that's for us, the make or break, or was finding those people, finding that team to take the business kind of into the future.
So there's a human element that's really paramount at Brant and Cochran versus creating the product. You want to create people who want to be there.
Yeah. Well, and we want to create a product, but you need the one before you get to the other.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, that's really it is really the people.
For sure. So if you had to give advice to young entrepreneurs or folks who are hoping to grow a small business here in Maine, maybe it is a product like an Allagash Cruiser, or maybe it's another kind of startup, what would your advice be?
I think it's, number one, be patient.
Yep.
And if you want to build a business which is you think you're gonna, we're gonna grow a multiple of 10 every year. It's like, number one, that sounds like a horrible business to be in. I wouldn't want to do that. But be patient. I think it's also know what you don't know. Be willing to admit that you don't know everything.
Yep.
And find those people around you. Find always people. I always tell people, any meeting I want to be in, I want to be the dumbest guy in the room.
I've actually used that exact line on this podcast. Yeah.
It's like you want to be the stupidest guy.
Yeah.
Like you want other people to be smarter than you.
Yep. I use that exact line when I'm talking
right.
blue. Yeah.
And if you go and if you have that attitude, which believe me, trained as a lawyer, that's very hard for me to do.
Oh, no doubt.
Because I am the smartest guy.
You have to be the smartest guy in the room
when
you're a lawyer.
You have to think you're the smartest guy in the room. You don't have to be, but you have to think and project that you're the smartest guy in the room. But so finding the right people to build a team, finding the right advisors, and and by that, a lot of times when you're building a business, like, well, I need to find my lawyer and I need to find my accountant and my business advisor. It's like one of the things that being in that Maine Outdoor Brands group is also it's just a lot of support.
Yeah.
So actually I was talking right before we came on. I have a friend that makes canvas tents out in Durango, Colorado that we met and did a collaboration with.
Do they make half wedges?
I don't know. You have to, it's Ellis Canvas Tents.
Okay.
Dennis is great. He's a great guy.
It's on recording. I'm going to look at that.
We were talking about this just this morning, which is that, you go through all of this stuff trying to build your business, but when you're really at it, it's about your team and your people and how do you develop your product in a sustainable way so that you're not burning yourself out and setting impossible goals. We've never had a business plan.
Wow.
I've, even in my software business days, we never had one because it changes every 5. By the time you're done with it, it's changed. And so I think the other thing is to spend less time planning and more time doing, because you're going to, no matter what your end goal is, unless you're, financed by, venture capital or something, where there's like these certain benchmarks you have to meet or you're not getting funded and all that kind of crazy stuff.
Yikes.
If it's just you're doing it yourself or you and a group of friends are doing something together, your path's going to zigzag and you have to know it's going to. And you can't let that dissuade you from the end goal. The end goal is to have some kind of cool business with your buddies or that you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think the product, the single-mindedness towards the goal, to say, I've got a 5-year plan. In 5 years, I'm going to be doing X. There's no way you're doing that in 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not even, you don't know what's going to happen with the economy, with people's tastes, whatever.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So, we always say, just start your business, start it, try it, rely upon other people.
Yep.
Reach out, ask for help. There's so many people that want to help you.
Oh, no doubt.
And I don't know if I think that being here in Maine is part of that. I think there's a lot of folks here that want to help each other.
No doubt.
Because they want to help you because you're going to help them later.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. So you talked about axes telling a story and being a part of history and being a part of someone's history. And I would say that Brant and Cochran as a brand also has the goal of being part of its employees' history and as part of the history of your consumers.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right.
Yeah.
I saw a review of one of our axes. Someone did the Acadian, which is our half wedge.
Yep.
Someone made a video and put it on YouTube. I just watched it this morning.
Sure.
And he was, chopping down trees and doing all this stuff. And he was talking about his family and using his Brant and Cochran axes with his kids.
Yep.
And it's like, that's cool. That makes it all worth it.
That's the goal. That's what it ultimately comes back to, right? That's what makes it all worth it. Nice. So I like to end my podcasts with generally a funny question. And for you, I actually have two. And I feel like you might know what one of them is. The first one, of course, is there ever going to be a revival of Outdoors-ish?
You'd have to ask Griffin.
Oh. The gauntlet has been cast.
Yes.
He's so busy right now, but yeah.
Ghostland's this weekend?
It's coming up. It's sold out.
Soon,
it's coming out. It's coming up real soon. Yeah. So, I heard Outdoors-ish was a hoot and a holler of a good time. And if you want another guest on it, please let me know. I heard it was very memorable, or maybe not rememberable.
Not rememberable.
Oh, that's awesome. And then the second question I had for you was, what's the one thing you wish people would stop doing with their axes? Just what is it?
Well, it's kind of a negative, is not taking care of them.
Oh.
So it's like they should be taking care of them. And by taking care of them, what I mean is keep them sharp. That's why we always say you shouldn't sharpen your axe. You should keep your axe sharp, because a sharp axe is safer to use than a dull axe.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it doesn't glance.
Doesn't glance off, right?
Yep.
Absolutely. So keeping your axe sharp, I would hope everyone does that. It's not something hard to do if you, quote unquote, keep your axe sharp every time you have to use it, significantly, not chop it into one log, but use it for a couple hours. You just take 5 minutes using a honing puck or a honing paddle and sharpen it up, keep it sharp. And then also taking care of the handle. To keep the axe safe, to keep the handle on it.
Like linseed oil? Or?
Yeah, we use raw linseed oil. Just wipe raw linseed oil on it.
Yep.
Every couple months. Depends where you keep your axe. So if you're keeping it Outside, it's probably pretty good in the garage because it's going to change with the weather. Keeping an axe next to your wood stove where it's dry is not great.
Yep.
Especially for people. We've had users down in the Southwest that bought stuff, and they said, my handle came off my axe. I said, where were you keeping it? Well, next to my wood stove. Where do you live? Yuma, Arizona. Okay, I get it.
So there's the
It just
problem.
completely just shrunk.
Yep.
So I think that that's the one thing we would hope people would do is that they're going to treat. They spend a lot of money on one of our axes.
Yes.
We hope they're going to treat it like that, like they spend a lot of money on it, and treat it so they can hand that down. And so, 150 years from now, someone goes, "Oh my God, I got a Brant and Cochran axe. Look, it's a 2026, and Keg Whitford was the blacksmith who made this. That's awesome. I got a keg." Because we put the blacksmith's initials on it. Whoever made the axe, their initial goes on the axe with the year it was made.
That's super cool. Is Keg your...
Keg's the one that just left for New York.
Oh, that's really cool, though.
Yeah.
Well, but it's a legendary smith.
A little bittersweet having them leave.
Sure. Well, that's awesome. So we talked about a lot.
We talked about a lot of stuff.
We talked a lot about a lot of stuff. We talked about axes. We talked about the history of axes, axe heads. We talked about Brant and Cochran as a business. And, I'm going to end my podcast with the typical catch line, of course. And I'm going to end my podcast by saying, once again, that the Allagash Cruiser is one of the most beautiful museum-worthy pieces of craftsmanship I've ever seen. And I will die on that hill. So if you're ever looking for an axe, definitely check out Brant and Cochran, as there's a reason that Field and Stream says that their axes are some of the best in the entire world, even though axes are made around the world. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for being on Between the Piers, and hope to hear about a revival of Outdoors-ish rather soon. I volunteer as a guest for it, hopefully someday. So Thank you so much for being here. It was great chatting with you. And thank you so much, everybody, for listening. And thank you so much for sticking with this podcast as I figure it all out. And, of course, as always, stay weird, Portland.